Hi, this is Sue Olson. This is week number 6, behavioral intervention. I'm sorry for any of the background noise that you may hear. I am babysitting for an extra dog this weekend, so if you hear the barking, we'll try and speak louder over it. This is Steve, and he's someone you haven't met before. He's a 64-year-old man who is a former accountant and a lawyer. And Steve's been coming to me for some time now. And a lot of his issues in his life right now stem around financial issues with his wife. And so what I thought would help out would be behavioral rehearsal. Last week, Steve and I selected some of the issues that lead up to, which ends up culminating with big fights between him and his wife, but we identified some of the issues. And why don't you tell me, maybe you can recap to me in your own words what we talked about last week.
Well, I told you about how we do budgeting and paying bills.
Right.
Basically, I set up the budget a month in advance on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Because my wife and I both get paid weekly.
Okay.
And identify those expenses we have to pay out of that Friday's paychecks.
Okay.
And ideally, the model says we cash our checks and put the funds in envelopes. For example, so much goes towards rent, so much towards food shopping, utilities, cell phone, gas for the cars, car insurance, things of that nature, car payments. And anything excess goes into an envelope for if we want to buy something for the house or start to save money for a vacation.
Right.
Where it falls down is that very often either I have forgotten to identify a bill that must be paid that week, or I have, in order to make a prior week balance, if you will, made an arrangement with a creditor to pay them the following week, but that's not reflected in the budget.
Oh, okay.
Maybe because, for example, the prior week I told my wife we had plenty of funds, let's go out to a nice dinner, when I really took the money from another category and put off paying that bill.
Oh.
And then...
Which is basically what we were going to talk about this week, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, how did it go this past week with, you know, we did some role play last week as far as just like identifying stuff in the budget, and you were going to talk to your wife about, you know, a few of the issues, the problems with the budget. You know, sometimes, you know, bills change from month to month.
Right. I mean, a budget's a budget. I mean, it's not exactly the same every month, for example, for the utilities, or we do a bigger food shopping or a smaller food shopping. But I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I've identified what I think are 2 issues that I'd like to discuss with you. One is, I have a very difficult time, if we're running short of money, not feeling guilty that I'm not providing enough for our family. Okay. That I should be providing more funds on a weekly basis. Okay. And because of that guilt, or in addition to that guilt, I don't do well with confrontation. Or confrontation in my mind when maybe it shouldn't be confrontation, but just a discussion saying, hey, that's the way things are. But to me, it's confrontation or it's delivering bad news, and I have a very difficult time doing that, which again I think relates back to my guilt feelings over not providing enough.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's something we can address. You know, let's take this step by step. You know, this week you said, I mean, did it go any better, you know, with the money budgeting? Did you sit together? No.
Not really.
No.
Not really. Again, I have a very hard time disclosing a lot of this to her.
Okay.
And because of that, I tend not to.
Okay. Well, what I had in mind that maybe would help out a bit is what they call role play. And what I could do is pretend I'm your wife, okay? And, you know, we could go over things that, approaches that you may use with her. You know, different, maybe different ideas that, you know, you might even want to work on it together. But I think, you know, for now, like you said, you know, your guilt and your, you know, you're afraid of confrontation is basically what's kind of, you know, blocking you, if you will, from saying what you need to, you know.
And this has been a long
yeah,
term problem.
You were telling me that. So, if you want to give the role play a shot, you know, we can try that. You know, I'll throw in a couple of things here and there that, you know, might be a little negative, and, you know, maybe we can go over it a few times. And, you know, sometimes when you do that with somebody, it makes it a little bit easier.
I'm willing to give it a shot.
Okay, all right, so I'll be your wife, and it's Saturday morning, and we're sitting down, and we've got our budget in front of us, and we've got all the money, and we're going to divvy it up between the bills. But I'm counting the money, and I see there's a little shortage here. So what happens?
There's more than a little shortage. There's a bill that's not listed that I didn't pay last week that I should have, but ran short of funds because of that dinner we went out for last weekend. So that the dinner was a little more than we had expected to spend, and so I put off paying the cell phone bill. And now we've got to pay that cell phone bill before our service would be temporarily disconnected.
Well, why didn't you tell me about this before?
That's a real good question. I have a hard time admitting things like that to you. I don't know whether it's because I have guilt that I'm not bringing in enough. We've spoken about me getting a second job, but we agreed that...
But I think that's just a cop-out.
What do you mean?
I think you're just making excuses because you keep doing this over and over again.
It could be. It could be. But again, because I am fearful of confrontation, I just tend to ignore it. And by putting it off and ignoring it, it's almost like an ostrich burying his head in the sand. And I know it's going to come to roost at some point, but, you know...
So you'd rather deal with me being angry?
I'd rather not, but I don't know how else to approach you. I'm just very stymied in that regard.
Okay, that sounds good. You know, I just, you know, from what I see, you know,
if I may interrupt for a second.
Sure.
I have to tell you that usually when my wife and I have any discussion like that, it becomes more heated than we just were. And if I knew that we could keep it on that same low-key basis where I didn't feel like I was being attacked, right, which I'm not saying she is attacking me, it's my own perception that I'm being attacked, so I get very defensive,
sure,
or defensive. So I guess one of the things I also should work on is not being so defensive, listening to her, not taking it personally, but taking it to a point where we're working on this problem together. Right. And I don't know how to do that.
Well, I think that, you know, this week, you know, what I'm going to suggest to you is I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to go home and I want you to rehearse this. Not with your wife, but, you know, in the mirror. You can videotape yourself with your cell phone or whatever. And I want you to practice. And practice saying these things to her. A few of the things you just leave very open. You know, you turn it around onto, well, I can't do this, I can't confront, I don't like to be confronted. But, you know, if I really was your wife, I'd be wondering, well, what is the matter? You know, why doesn't, after so many times, what is it that he doesn't get? You know? But I want you to go home and I want you to just this week practice. And, you know, hopefully the shortages don't come up in next week's budget. If they do, at least you'll have some practice where you'll be able to deal with that on your own. You know, if you need any help, you know, you have my card.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Would you be willing, if I have a very difficult time approaching her, letting me, say, telephone her from one of our sessions, say next week or the week after, so that I'd have somebody there that I know I could talk to afterwards about how it went or what I should have done differently? Is that something we could do?
Let me give it some thought. Like I said, this week I want you to practice it on your own. And, you know, hopefully you don't have to deal with this. Let's try and keep things on the up and up this week. And, you know, if it's something that you really feel the need to do, I'll think about it and we can talk about it next session.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Take care.